Welcome to Brighter Shore Central, your home for any Brighter Shores news. Do remember to subscribe. Let's get right into the details. So some recent news has come out regarding Brighter Shores. I'm going to go down the main factors in the first 3 minutes of the video to respect your time. And if you want to hang out afterwards, you can do. We'll talk about it in more depth and detail with some opinions as well. Firstly, to note is I'm happy to announce that Brighter Shore Central, according to Andrew Gower, is going to have a tabletop RPG style to it. So if you are a fan of anything tabletop RPG, then you will like the idea of this game. Of course, it's still going to be an MMO, but it's going to be tabletop RPG style to it. Secondly, there's going to be an important focus on the starting experience in the game. It wants to make sure that you try out loads of different things in the game rather than just focusing on one aspect. So the starting experience in the game has been carefully crafted according to Andrew Gower. Another crucial aspect is that it just doesn't want to be a clone of another game. It doesn't want to be a clone of RuneScape or old school RuneScape. It may take inspiration from those games because he is the creator of it, but Andrew Gower says he wants to create this game as part of his kind of own unique way of doing things. The other point is that the professions that you can actually train and level up within the game are linked to the episode. So these are not just random professions you train randomly. They're going to be linked to the content updates that are coming out in 4 separate episodes. So there is going to what seems to be lore and meaning behind each profession that you're training, rather than just training a profession just for the sake of it. Andrew Gower has also mentioned that they've carefully thought about the balancing in the game and the meta in the game. What's the most efficient method in the game is always going to be constantly switching and changing. So that way you're not doing the same activity over and over again. You're going to have variety and be trying loads of different things because there's going to be new and different ways to train professions and your combat. Now this is an important one. Now all 3 of the archetypes in the game, the characters in the game, all 3 are going to be magic based. So it isn't that there is going to be one type of magic. Cryoknight is going to have ice magic, so you can imagine some sort of ice related spells. Maybe it slows their movement or something like that. The Guardians are going to have nature magic, so who knows what that is. And then a Hammermage, which is storm magic, so the ability to create storms as part of your magic spell. That is very interesting. It looks like there's going to be 3 different types of magics as part of the 3 characters that you can choose: Hammermage, Guardian, and Cryoknight. They've also said, Andrew Gower, that he's going with a rumor-based approach. So you'll notice in the trailer, it shows a lot of blank space in certain areas. Is because of the design of the game, it's going to be a case of going from room by room to room and that exploration and mystery that's involved with the game. Also happy to confirm that you will be able to teleport around the game. It will have magic spells, so you don't have to spend hours running to the next location. You'll be able to use magic to teleport around the game. But also he said that the game's going to be compact as well, so it doesn't feel empty. And finally, as mentioned in my other video, it's been reconfirmed that he will not be doing auto reoccurring payments, or it's unlikely that he will be doing that. If you want to buy a premium pass, then you have to basically make the decision every month to buy it. So let's go through the questions in detail, and let's go to the meat and potato of the article, whereby Andrew Gower is answering questions. So the first question was, let's talk about why this game has taken 10 years. What have you been doing day to day? Now, Andrew Gower's response to that in full is, that's quite an interesting story. Firstly, a lot of the reasons it's taken so long is because I decided to make things difficult for myself by developing my own game engine. So as we know, that they have actually developed an engine called their Fen engine. It's got Fen Research and their engine surrounding that. And actually, That is very interesting because it could add a lot of versatility. It could mean that updating the game is much easier whilst using this new engine. Although it took them a while to build the engine to begin with, hopefully it pays off in the long term, and that's the sort of what I think is the mindset behind it. And it goes on to say, actually, the original goal was that I set myself was to develop a game engine knowing everything I know about what's annoying making games. I had some really good ideas on how to make it much easier to make games. And I actually started making them to prove the engine. And making a computer game is big, expensive proposition. No one's going to use an engine unless it's proven. And there you have the chicken and egg situation. We realized the only way we're going to prove the engine was making a really big game with itself. So it originally started making a completely different game, which I might still go back to one day. But everyone's posting on my Twitter, emails, everyone's saying, what are you doing these days? Are you going to make an MMO? I hope you're making another MMO. Literally every single person who spoke to me said that I hoped I was making another MMO. So eventually I realized that perhaps make another. So in terms of actually starting, then we've probably been working on this in earnest since some point in 2017. But even then it was quite a slow burn. And he went on to say, the question is, what does your concept or vision of what an MMO should like come from? I know you've mentioned, for example, inspiration from some MUDs, multi-user dungeons. I see similar DNA in this, and it's not just RuneScape. So it's all the things that I grew up with, you know. It's old school MUDs, it's point and click adventures, it's tabletop RPGs. When we were making the game early on, we were playing some tabletop RPGs. You'll probably see one behind me. I love tabletop RPGs, and the reason we've gone for this sort of grid-based look originally is it actually had a wooden table drawn on it as well. So it is going for this kind of grid-based look and a tabletop RPG vibe as part of the game, which is interesting. And stylistically, that's the sort of thing he goes on to say that he wants. And that's just because I love tabletop RPGs. So if you're a fan of any of that sort of genre, then this is going to be implicated in an MMO format, essentially. He went on to say, it does feel inevitable that people, me included, since I grew up with the game, will compare this to RuneScape, looking at professions like blacksmithing and woodcutting. Now, interestingly, Gower did say that although he's making this game, he didn't want it to look specifically at any other previous game. He wanted to try and make something that is different, essentially. So he went on to say, if anything, we tried as much as possible to do things that hadn't been done before. But there are certain staples that you kind of have to have in a fantasy setting to make it work. And there's certain things that just work really well in that context. But very keen to not just be the same game again. So there is this idea that it's getting compared to old school RuneScape and RuneScape. Naturally, it is going to, because this guy is the creator of RuneScape. However, it looks like he wants to have its own unique systems and its own unique way of doing things. Went on to say, are all the professions available at once? Do they interact like with resources, one fueling another? They went on to say, Andrew Gower, we've tried to make the professions link into one another quite a bit. We've tried to mix it up a bit. Some of them are more standalone than others because we've tried to, again, have variety depending on the mood you're in and how you want to play. As you level up, we've tried to make the pace at which you get new things to do in the professions very rapid so it doesn't get too dry and too repetitive. So that's good to hear, that the fact that when you are going to do your professions, there's going to be a variety of activities that you can do. It's not a case of trying to find the best method and just doing that over and over and over again. It sounds like that he wants to add variety in the game so you can train your professions in multiple different ways, which I agree with. I think that's important in my opinion. He then goes on, They're also linked to the episode structure we've got. So as we know, there's going to be 4 episodes as part of the updates in this game. Each episode is going to unlock new areas and new content and new quests. And what it seems to be is new professions that are associated with that episode as well. So that means every time you come back to the game, say every 3 to 6 months, there is going to be new content to do as well. So that's very good, because that means the game's going to be updated regularly and consistently, and that hopefully means that it'll maintain a decent player count, and we can all be like proud of a game that is hopefully thriving and has a few thousand players on it. It doesn't have to be massively successful. It doesn't have to have hundreds of thousands of players. If it has a few thousand players, that's still good. It's still got multiple people that you can interact with, you can trade with, you can boss with, all those kind of things. So even if it's just relatively successful, then it's a win in my book. So it goes on to say here, which I found interesting, but the game sort of nudges you to doing different things all the time, so it doesn't become making 1,000 swords in a row. And I think that's incredibly important as well. You don't want to be doing the same action over and over again, so hopefully you can just change out what you're doing a little bit. But naturally, you're probably going to get those players that find the most optimal way to train and just do that over and over again. I think there's no getting away from that in like an MMORPG. People are going to do that still. But what he's trying to say is, look, we're just going to give you more decisions, more options, more variety. So another question was, it feels like a big change for your style is having 3 set classes. Why go with classes now, and how do they compare to the traditional warrior, rogue, mage triangle, or in RuneScape's case, obviously, warrior, range, mage triangle? So what they're saying here is that I mentioned at the start of the video is, very interestingly, they're going to be different types of magic. So the Cryoknight has got ice magic, the Guardians have got nature magic, and the Hammermage has got storm magic. They can all do range, they can all do melee. So all 3 classes have the ability to do mage, do range, do melee. You're not locked into a set attack style. So what the different characters are in terms of Cryoknight, Guardian, and Hammermage is that you're going to be able to have different spells with those characters, but you're still going to be able to use range and melee as well. Okay, so that's interesting design. It says here, what's the wiggle room for customizing your class versus mastering all the abilities? They've put, it's more about mastering the class as it's assigned to you. So you want to master the class that you choose. Each class is going to have a particular type of play style because it's associated with different types of magic. So you would have maybe one of them for example, is has a sense spell. So of course that's seeing within range what's around you. It highlights objects in front of you. So that's interesting, and you would play the game in a certain way if you have the sense spell, as opposed to maybe other types of spells which don't have that scouting ability. It might be that they have some kind of other ability that's more like DPS related, so you would go, or an AoE style attack, I don't know. But it's going to change the magic. The different 3 characters with the different 3 magic is going to mean that each character is kind of played slightly differently, and you've got to master those the magic that each character uses. So it says here we might have that in a few boss battles, but that's not what the majority is in the game is meant to be like that. But having said that, as the game develops further, we definitely want to have more and different ways you can load out your character to meet your personal preference. So the ability to have variety with your character. Tell me about the open world. What's the motivation to explore? One of the unusual things about our world is we've gone with a room-based system, which has the feeling of a lot of RPGs where your characters will be in rooms doing a certain encounter, and then you're in another room doing another encounter. The rooms are all connected together. It's very easy to move between one and the other, and it has various technical advantages as well, because it allows us to instance each room the right number of times based on how many players are in it. So basically what that means, or what I am interpreting that as, is when you go from one room to another, and say that there's some resources in that next room. If there is loads of players in that room, they're going to put more resource in there. So it's going to like auto generate more trees, more rocks, more, items to gather based on how many players are in that room as well. So that gives you the opportunity to basically not fight over resources like happens in some MMORPGs. You're going to have a dynamic system whereby there's going to be more resources if there's more players in that particular area, which I think is a good thing. Okay, and then it goes on. I'm very keen to cater towards players who want to explore and discover. We've got this world map that shows you everywhere you've been, but it starts off completely blank, just the room you're in. And each time you explore a new room, it maps it out onto the map. So essentially, it's this idea of discoverability. You're not going to open up the map and know where everything is automatically. As you go from room to room to room, you unlock more of the map and you're able to see where everything is more and more. And I think that's an interesting way of doing it because it allows you to discover different areas. I hope that they make it very difficult to get to certain rooms, so we just don't know what's in that area for a long time, and that adds mystery and intrigue. Oh, what's in this particular area that nobody's able to access yet? I hope that they have something like that. That would be really good. And it goes on to say, to get the right image in my mind, we're talking about a defined room as a chunk of the world. Right, I use a sort term as a sort of RPG concept, where there might be a section of the map which is outdoors, a river or a glade in the forest or something like that, but we define them as rooms and they're all designed with defined exits. So basically, you go from area to area essentially, and there's a mystery about it. With the magic system, I'm assuming it unlocks teleports to get around faster. So Andrew Gower has said that they will be teleports available. You will be able to teleport, and the world is actually surprisingly compact as well, because I don't think it's a great deal of fun spending a huge amount of time walking from one place to another. And how big are the rooms or spaces in terms of what you'll be spending time in? Apparently, it's something that they've I won't read all this, but they've mathematically worked it out. They've thought about how much resources, how much things you can do in one particular area before you move on to the next one. So they've made it in just the careful balance to make sure that the gameplay is essentially engaging. And he also said, just to clarify, looking at the paid premium pass, that unlocks all areas and content. I play a lot of Destiny 2, and it sounds like a seasonal pass in my mind. Big free update, paid to get everything else. So it's going to be loosely similar. So they're not going to do auto-reoccurring payments. Basically, as more content unlocks, you are basically going to have to get a premium pass to get the extra content, but you'll have access to the base game for free and certain areas for free, and then you unlock other areas as you go along. So that's the main information about the game and Andrew Gower's questions that he's answered. Please do smash the like button and subscribe to the channel.